Keiko Tanaka pushed her cleaning cart down the long hallway. Her shoes made soft sounds on the shiny floor. It was 9 p.m., and the big office building was quiet now. All the workers had gone home hours ago. Only Keiko and a few other cleaning people were still there. She had been working at Yamamoto Corporation for 3 years. Every night she came to clean the offices of important business people. She wiped their desks, emptied their trash cans, and made everything perfect for the next day. The workers never really looked at her during the day. To them, she was just part of the building, like the chairs and tables. Keiko was 52 years old. She had short black hair with some gray in it. Her hands were rough from years of cleaning work. She wore a simple blue uniform that all the cleaning ladies wore. She was not tall, and she moved quietly through the offices like she was trying not to bother anyone. Tonight, like every night, she had many rooms to clean. First, she cleaned the small offices where the regular workers sat. Then she moved to the bigger offices where the managers worked. Finally, she would clean the executive floor. That was where the most important people in the company worked. Keiko liked the executive floor the best, but not because it was fancy. She liked it because of one special room. It was called the Executive Lounge. This room had comfortable chairs, expensive paintings on the walls, and big windows that looked out over the city. But what Keiko loved most about this room was the piano. The piano was huge and black. It was so shiny that Keiko could see her face in it when she cleaned it. The company had bought it 5 years ago. Sometimes, when there were big parties or important meetings, someone would play music on it. But most of the time, it just sat there, looking beautiful but making no sound. Every night, Keiko spent extra time cleaning around the piano. She would dust every part of it very carefully. She cleaned the keys until they were perfect. She polished the black surface until it shined like a mirror. While she worked, she would look at the keys and wonder what they would sound like if someone pressed. Keiko had always loved music. When she was a little girl, she would sit by the radio and listen to all kinds of songs. She knew many songs by heart. Sometimes, when no one was listening, she would sing quietly to herself. Her voice was soft and sweet, but she never sang loud, enough for others to hear. When Keiko was young, she dreamed of learning to play the piano. She would see pianos in movies and on TV, and she would imagine herself sitting at one making beautiful music. But her family was very poor. Her father worked in a factory and her mother took care of 6 children. There was never enough money for things like piano lessons. Maybe someday, her mother would say when little Keiko asked about music lessons, when we have more money. But that day never came. When Keiko grew up, she got married to a kind man named Taro. He worked hard, but they still did not have much money. They had 2 children, a boy and a girl. Keiko worked part-time jobs to help pay for food and clothes for their family. She still loved music, but piano lessons seemed like something for rich people, not for families like hers. Taro died in a car accident when he was only 45 years old. Keiko was very sad and scared. Now she had to take care of her children and her old mother all by herself. She had to find a job that paid enough money to support everyone. That is how she started working as a cleaning lady. Her children grew up and moved to other cities for work. Now it was just Keiko and her mother. Her mother was 78 years old and could not walk very well. She needed medicine that cost a lot of money. Keiko worked 6 days a week to pay for everything they needed. Some nights, when Keiko was cleaning the executive lounge, she would stop and look at the piano for a long time. She would imagine what it would be like to sit on the bench and touch the keys. She wondered if the keys felt smooth or rough. She wondered what kind of sounds they would make. Sometimes, when she was dusting the piano, she would put her finger very close to a key, but she never actually touched it. She was afraid someone might see her. She was afraid she might get in trouble. The piano was very expensive, and she was just a cleaning lady. She was not supposed to touch things like that. But even though she never touched the keys, Keiko could imagine the music in her head. When she looked at the black and white keys, she could almost hear melodies. Sometimes, while she cleaned other parts of the room, she would hum very quietly. The songs she hummed were old songs her grandmother used to sing to her when she was. Little Keiko's grandmother had been a special person in her life. She had lived with Keiko's family when Keiko was young. Every night, before Keiko went to bed, her grandmother would sing beautiful songs. Some were Japanese folk songs that had been passed down for many years. Others were songs her grandmother had learned from the radio. Music is like magic, her grandmother used to say. It can make sad people happy and lonely people feel less alone. Keiko always remembered those words. Now, when Keiko looked at the piano in the executive lounge, she thought about her grandmother. She wondered if her grandmother would have liked this piano. She wondered if her grandmother would have been able to play it. One night, while Keiko was cleaning the piano, she noticed something. There were some sheet music papers on top of it. Someone had left them there after a company party. The papers had lots of little black dots and lines on them. Keiko could not read music, but she thought the papers looked interesting. She picked up one of the papers and looked at it closely. At the top, it said, Für Elise by Ludwig van Beethoven. Keiko had heard this song before on the radio. It was a beautiful, gentle song that always made her feel peaceful. As she held the sheet music, Keiko tried to imagine how the little dots and lines turned into music. She wished she could understand what they meant. She wished she could make the piano play this beautiful song. But she put the papers back where she found them and continued with her cleaning. She had work to do, and she could not spend all night dreaming about music. After she finished cleaning the executive lounge, Keiko moved on to clean the rest of the offices. But all night, she kept thinking about the piano and the sheet music. She kept humming the melody of Für Elise while she worked. When her work was finally done, it was almost 3 a.m. Keiko took the elevator down to the first floor and walked out into the empty street. The city was quiet, and most of the lights in the buildings were turned off. Only a few street lights lit her way as she walked to the bus stop. On the bus ride home, Keiko looked out the window and thought about her day. Tomorrow she would come back and clean the same offices again. She would dust the same piano again. She would look at the keys again and wonder what they would sound like. But tonight, something felt different. Tonight, she had held real sheet, music in her hands. Tonight she had imagined herself playing that beautiful song. Maybe it was just a dream, but it felt good to dream. When Keiko got home, her mother was sleeping. Keiko made herself a cup of tea and sat at her small kitchen table. She was tired, but she was not ready to sleep yet. She kept thinking about the piano and the music. Maybe someday, she thought, she would find a way to learn about music. Maybe someday she would understand what those little dots and lines meant. Maybe someday her dreams would become real, but for now, she would keep cleaning and keep dreaming. Tomorrow night she would see the piano again. 2 weeks had passed since Keiko found the sheet music on the piano. Every night she thought about those little black dots and lines. Every night she wondered what they meant. The melody of Für Elise played in her head while she worked. Tonight was Thursday, and the building seemed even quieter than usual. Many of the company workers had gone on a business trip to Osaka. The executive floor was completely empty. Even the security guard was downstairs in the lobby watching his small TV. Keiko pushed her cleaning cart toward the executive lounge. Her heart was beating faster than normal, but she did not know why. Maybe it was because the building felt so empty tonight. Maybe it was because she had been thinking about music so much lately. She opened the door to the executive lounge and turned on the lights. The big piano sat in its usual place by the window. The city lights outside made the room feel magical, like something special could happen here. Keiko started her normal cleaning routine. She dusted the chairs and tables. She cleaned the windows. She emptied the small trash can. But all the time, she kept looking at the piano. When she finally walked over to clean the piano, she noticed something different. Someone had left the sheet music there again, but this time there were 3 pieces of music instead of 1. The top paper still said Für Elise, but there were 2 other songs underneath it. Keiko picked up the papers and looked at them. The second song was called Amazing Grace. She knew this song very well. Her grandmother used to sing it sometimes. The third song was a Japanese folk song called Sakura. This was one of her favorite songs from when she was little. As she held the music papers, Keiko felt something strange happening inside her. She could hear the melodies in her head very clearly. She could imagine how they would sound if someone played them on this beautiful piano. She looked around the room to make sure she was completely alone. The door was closed. The hallway outside was quiet. The security guard was far away downstairs. No one would know if she just touched one key to hear what it sounded like. Keiko's hands were shaking a little as she set down the sheet music. She walked to the side of the piano and looked at the keys. They were so white and clean. The black keys looked smooth and perfect. She remembered her grandmother's words. Music is like magic. Maybe, just maybe, she could make a little magic tonight. Very slowly, Keiko reached out her right hand. Her finger touched the middle key on the piano. The sound that came out was clear and beautiful. It rang through the quiet room like a bell. Keiko pulled her hand back quickly and looked around. Did anyone hear that? Was someone coming? But the room stayed quiet, and no one came. The sound of that one note made Keiko feel something she had not felt in years. It made her feel excited and alive. She wanted to hear more. This time, she pressed the key next to the first one. Then, she pressed another one. Each key made a different sound. Some sounds were high and some were low. All of them were beautiful. Keiko knew she should stop. She should go back to her cleaning work. But something inside her would not let her stop. The music was calling to her. She sat down on the piano bench very carefully. It felt soft and comfortable. From here, she could reach all the keys easily. She put her hands on the keyboard like she had seen people do in movies. Then she remembered the melody her grandmother used to hum. It was a simple song, just a few notes that went up and down. Keiko tried to find those notes on the piano. She pressed one key, then another. The second note was too high. She tried a different key. This one was too low. She tried again. This time it sounded right. Slowly, very slowly, Keiko played the simple melody. Her grandmother's song came out of the piano, soft and sweet. It was not perfect, but it was music. Real music that she was making with her own hands. Tears started to come to Keiko's eyes. She had never felt anything like this before. The music seemed to flow from somewhere deep inside her, through her fingers and into the piano. It was like her grandmother was there with her, teaching her the song. When she finished the little melody, Keiko sat very still for a moment. She could not believe what had just happened. She had played the piano. She, Keiko Tanaka, the cleaning lady, had made music on this expensive, beautiful piano. But now she felt scared. What if someone had heard her? What if she got in trouble? She could lose her job, and then how would she take care of her mother? Keiko stood up from the piano bench and looked around the room again. Everything was still quiet. No one was coming. She was safe. She walked back to her cleaning cart and got her dust cloth. She cleaned every key she had touched, making sure there were no fingerprints left behind. She cleaned the piano bench where she had sat. She wanted to make sure no one would know what she had done. But as she cleaned, Keiko could not stop thinking about how the music had felt. Playing those simple notes had made her happier than she had been in years. For just a few minutes, she had not been worried about money, or her mother's medicine, or her lonely life. She had just been someone making beautiful music. When she finished cleaning the piano, Keiko looked at the sheet music again. She picked up the paper with Amazing Grace on it. She knew this song so well that she could sing every word. But could she play it on the piano? She looked around the room one more time. Still no one there. Still completely quiet. Keiko sat down at the piano again. This time, she did not feel as scared. She put her hands on the keys and tried to remember how Amazing Grace sounded. The first note was easy to find. The second note took her a few tries, but slowly, she began to play the melody. It was not smooth like when a real piano player would play it. She had to stop and find the right keys, but the song was there, coming, out of the piano because of her fingers. When she got to the part that went, "was blind, but now I see," Keiko's voice joined the piano. She sang very softly, so quietly that only she could hear. But the words and the music together made something magical happen in that quiet room. After she finished Amazing Grace, Keiko tried to play Sakura. This song was harder because it had more notes that went up and down quickly. But she kept trying, and slowly she began to find the right keys. As she played, Keiko started to understand something amazing. The music was not as hard as she had thought it would be. Her fingers seemed to know what to do, even though she had never learned how to play piano. It was like the music had been sleeping inside her all these years, waiting for the right time to wake up. She played Sakura 3 times, and each time it sounded better. By the third time, she could play most of the song without stopping to find the right keys. When she finished, Keiko realized she had been sitting at the piano for almost 30 minutes. She still had other offices to clean tonight. She needed to get back to work. But as she stood up from the piano bench, Keiko knew that something important had changed inside her. She had discovered something about herself that she never knew was there. She could make music. She could play the piano. Tomorrow night, she would come back to this room. And maybe, just maybe, she would sit at this piano again. 3 weeks had passed since that magical Thursday night when Keiko first touched the piano keys. Now, every night when she came to work, she felt excited. Her heart would beat faster as she got closer to the executive lounge. She had developed a new routine. First, she would clean all the other offices on the executive floor. Then, when she was sure no one else was around, she would go to the lounge and spend time with the piano. At first, she only played for 10 or 15 minutes each night. She was still scared someone might catch her. But as days went by and no one ever came, she became braver. Now she sometimes played for almost an hour. Keiko was learning new songs every few days. She had figured out how to play all the songs her grandmother used to sing. She could play Für Elise almost perfectly. Now, she had even learned some songs she heard on the radio during the day. The most amazing thing was how easy it seemed for her. When she heard a song, she could figure out how to play it on the piano without looking at sheet music. She would listen to the melody in her head, and then her fingers would find the right keys. At home during the day, Keiko had started listening to music differently. When a song came on the radio, she would pay attention to every note. She would imagine herself playing it on the piano. Sometimes she would move her fingers like she was playing, even when no piano was there. Her mother noticed that Keiko seemed happier lately. "You have been humming a lot," her mother said one morning over breakfast. "Are you feeling better these days?" Keiko smiled. "Yes, Mother. I think I am feeling better." But she did not tell her mother about the piano. She was not ready to share her secret yet. She was afraid that talking about it might make it disappear, like a dream that fades when you wake up. Tonight was different from other nights. Keiko had heard a new song on the radio that afternoon. It was a classical piece called Moonlight Sonata by Beethoven. The moment she heard it, she knew she had to learn how to play it. The song was more difficult than anything she had tried before. It had many notes that moved up and down quickly. Some parts were soft and gentle, and other parts were strong and powerful. Keiko arrived at the executive lounge earlier than usual tonight. She had finished cleaning the other offices quickly because she was so excited to try the new song. She sat at the piano and put her hands on the keys. She closed her eyes and tried to remember exactly how Moonlight Sonata sounded. The beginning was slow and sad, like moonlight shining on water. She found the first note and pressed it gently. Then the second note. The third note was harder to find, but she kept trying until she got it right. Slowly, very slowly, the beautiful melody began to come from the piano. Keiko's fingers moved carefully from key to key. Sometimes she made mistakes and had to start over. But each time she tried, it sounded better. As she played, Keiko felt like she was in a different world. The office building around her seemed to disappear. The city outside the windows seemed to disappear. There was only her, the piano, and the music. The sad, beautiful melody made her think about her life. She thought about her husband Taro and how much she missed him. She thought about her children who lived far away. She thought about her dreams that she had put away for so many years, but tonight those sad thoughts did not make her feel bad. The music seemed to take all her feelings and turn them into something beautiful. Her sadness became part of the song, making it more real and more touching. When she finished playing the first part of Moonlight Sonata, Keiko opened her eyes. She was surprised to see tears on her cheeks. She had been crying while she played, but they were not sad tears. They were tears of joy and wonder. She had never felt anything like this before. Playing the piano was like speaking a language she had always known, but never been able to use. Every note she played felt right and natural. Keiko looked at the clock on the wall. She had been playing for over an hour, but it felt like only few minutes had passed. Time seemed to move differently when she was making music. She knew she should continue with her cleaning work, but she could not stop yet. There were so many more songs she wanted to try. She began to play a Japanese folk song her grandmother had taught her when she was very small. But this time, instead of playing it exactly the way she remembered it, she added her own changes. She made some notes longer and some notes shorter. She added new notes that seemed to fit with the original melody. As she played, Keiko realized she was not just copying songs anymore. She was creating her own music. The songs she played sounded different from how other people would play them. They sounded like her. This discovery made her feel excited and a little scared at the same time. If she could create her own music, what did that mean? Was she really a musician? Could a cleaning lady be a real musician? After she finished the folk song, Keiko decided to try something completely new. She put her hands on the keys and started playing without thinking about any particular song. She just let her fingers move and make whatever sounds felt right. What came out was a melody she had never heard before. It was soft and hopeful, like a sunrise after a long, dark night. The music seemed to tell the story of her life, the hard times and the lonely times, but also the moments of beauty and hope. She played this new melody over and over, changing it a little each time. Sometimes she made it sadder, and sometimes she made it happier. It was like she was having a conversation with herself through the music. When she finally stopped playing, Keiko sat quietly for a moment. She could hardly believe what had just happened. She had composed her own song. She had created something that had never existed before. She looked at her hands resting on the piano keys. These were the same hands that cleaned offices and scrubbed floors every day. But they were also hands that could make beautiful music. She had been carrying this gift inside her all her life without knowing it. Keiko thought about all the years she had spent wishing she could play piano. All those times she had watched other people play and thought it was something she could never do. All those moments when she had pushed her musical dreams away because they seemed impossible. But now she knew the truth. The music had always been there, waiting inside her. It just needed the right moment to come out. As she finally stood up from the piano bench, Keiko made a decision. She would not hide this part of herself anymore. She did not know how, but she was going to find a way to let the music become a bigger part of her life. She cleaned the piano keys carefully, like always. But this time, as she polished each key, she was saying goodbye to them until tomorrow. Night. Thank you, she whispered to the piano. Thank you for helping me find myself. The piano sat silently in the moonlight, waiting for her to return. For 2 months now, Keiko had been playing the piano every night. She had become very good at it. Her fingers moved across the keys with confidence now. She could play many difficult songs, and she had even composed 5 of her own melodies. Tonight felt special to Keiko, though she did not know why. During the day, she had been thinking about a particular piece of music called Nocturne in E-flat major by Chopin. She had heard it on a classical music radio program that morning while she was making breakfast for her mother. The moment she heard that piece, something inside her heart had awakened. The music was so beautiful and so sad at the same time. It reminded her of everything she had lost in her life, but also of everything beautiful she had found. She had spent the whole day humming the melody and imagining how it would feel to play it on the piano. She could hardly wait for evening to come. Now it was 11 p.m. and Keiko was sitting at the piano in the executive lounge. The building was completely quiet, as usual. The security guard was downstairs. All the office workers had gone home hours ago. Keiko placed her hands on the keys and began to play the Chopin Nocturne. The melody flowed from her fingers like water. Each note was perfect, full of emotion and beauty. As she played, Keiko thought about her husband Taro. She remembered the way he used to smile at her when she sang while doing housework. She remembered how he would hold her hand when they walked together in the park. The music seemed to bring him back to her, just for these few minutes. Tears began to flow down her cheeks, but she did not stop playing. The tears were part of the music now. They made every note more real, more honest. She thought about her children, who were grown up now and living their own lives far away. She missed them so much, but she was proud of them too. The music carried all these feelings, the missing, the pride, the love that never goes away. She thought about her dreams that she had put aside for so many years, the dream of making music, of being more than just a cleaning lady, of having people listen to something beautiful that came from her heart. The Nocturne was telling all these stories. Every note was a memory. Every phrase was a feeling that had been locked inside her for years. Keiko was so lost in the music that she did not hear the elevator doors open down the hall. She did not hear the footsteps walking slowly toward the executive lounge. She did not notice the figure standing in the doorway, listening. Hiroshi Yamamoto, the CEO of Yamamoto Corporation, had come back to the office very late that night. He had an important meeting early the next morning with some business partners from America. He needed to get some papers from his office that he had forgotten to take home. When the elevator reached the executive floor, Yamamoto heard something. That made him stop walking. Someone was playing piano music, and it was the most beautiful sound he had ever heard. He followed the music down the hall to the executive lounge. When he looked through the doorway, he could not believe what he saw. Keiko, the cleaning lady he had seen many times but never really noticed, was sitting at the piano playing Chopin with incredible skill and emotion. Yamamoto stood frozen in the doorway. He knew this piece of music very well. He had studied piano when he was young, before he gave up music to join his father's business. He had played this same nocturne many times, but he had never heard it played with such feeling. Keiko's technique was not perfect. A trained musician would notice that. Some of her fingering was unusual, but her musical understanding was extraordinary. She played like someone who had lived every note, who understood exactly what the composer had wanted to say. Yamamoto watched as tears streamed down Keiko's face while she played. He could see that this was not just music for her. This was her heart speaking, her soul singing through the piano. As the nocturne reached its most beautiful and sad part, Yamamoto felt his own eyes fill with tears. He had not cried in many years. He had become a hard businessman who did not show emotions. But this music, played by this woman he had never really seen before, was breaking through all his walls. When Keiko finished playing, she sat quietly for a moment with her hands still on the keys. The last notes seemed to hang in the air like perfume. Then Yamamoto began to clap. His hands came together slowly at first, then faster. The sound of clapping in the quiet room made Keiko jump and turn around quickly. When she saw the CEO standing in the doorway, Keiko's face went white with fear. She stood up from the piano bench so fast that she almost fell down. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice shaking. "I'm so sorry. Please don't fire me. I was only—" But Yamamoto held up his hand to stop her from talking. There were tears in his eyes, and his voice was gentle when he spoke. "Please," he said, "don't apologize. That was the most beautiful music I have ever heard." Keiko stared at him, not understanding. Was he angry? Was he going to call security? She had been caught doing something she was not supposed to do. "I don't understand," she whispered. Yamamoto walked slowly into the room. He was a tall man in an expensive suit, but tonight he did not look like a powerful CEO. He looked like someone who had just witnessed something miraculous. "How long have you been playing piano?" he asked. I don't really play piano," Keiko said. "I mean, I've never had lessons. Sometimes I touch the keys when I'm cleaning." "Sometimes you touch the keys?" Yamamoto repeated. "What I just heard was not someone touching keys. That was a real musician playing real music." Keiko did not know what to say. She had never thought of herself as a real musician. "Please," Yamamoto said, "sit down. Tell me about yourself. Tell me about your music." Very slowly, Keiko sat back down on the piano bench. Yamamoto pulled up a chair and sat across from her. "I've worked here for 3 years," Keiko began quietly. "I clean the offices at night. I've always loved music, but I never learned how to play anything. Then one night, about 2 months ago, I touched one key, just to hear what it sounded like. And then what happened? The music just seemed to come out of me, like it had been waiting inside me all my life." Yamamoto nodded. He understood exactly what she meant. "I gave up playing piano when I was 25, he said. "My father said music was not a real career, that I needed to focus on business. I have regretted that decision every day of my life." Keiko looked at him with surprise. This powerful, important man had wanted to be a musician too? "Will you play something else for me?" Yamamoto asked. "Please?" Keiko hesitated. Then she turned back to the piano and began to play one of the melodies she had composed herself. It was the song that sounded like sunrise after a dark night, as she played her own music. Keiko felt something changing inside her. For the first time in her life, someone was really listening to her music. Someone understood what she was trying to say with the notes and melodies. When she finished, Yamamoto was quiet for a long time. "That was your own composition?" he asked finally. "Yes," Keiko said softly. "I don't know if it's any good. I've never studied music theory or anything like that." "It's beautiful," Yamamoto said. "It's honest and pure and beautiful. You have a gift, Keiko-san. A real gift." Keiko felt her heart beating very fast. No one had ever called her musical playing a gift before. No one had ever listened to her music and cried. "What happens now?" she asked. "Do I get fired?" Yamamoto smiled. For the first time that night, "No," he said. "Now we figure out how to help your gift grow." The next morning, Keiko could hardly believe what had happened the night before. Had she really played piano for the CEO? Had he really said she had a gift? Maybe it had all been a dream. But when she got to work that evening, there was an envelope waiting for her at the security desk. Her name was written on it in neat handwriting. Inside was a letter from Mr. Yamamoto. Dear Keiko-san, the letter said, thank you for sharing your beautiful music with me last night. I would like to meet with you tomorrow at 2 p.m. in my office to discuss something important. Please do not worry. This is a good thing. Sincerely, Hiroshi Yamamoto. Keiko read the letter 3 times. Her hands were shaking. What could the CEO want to discuss with her? She was just a cleaning lady. The next day, Keiko put on her best dress and went to the company building at 2 p.m. She had never been inside the executive offices during the day. Everything looked different with all the lights on and people working. Mr. Yamamoto's office was huge. It had big windows that looked out over the whole city. There were expensive paintings on the walls and beautiful furniture everywhere. Please sit down, Mr. Yamamoto said when she came in. He looked different during the day, too. He was wearing a perfect business suit and looked very important. But his voice was still kind, like it had been the night before. Keiko-san, he began, I have been thinking about your music all day and all night. I believe you have something very special. Keiko did not know what to say, so she just listened. My company has a cultural foundation, Mr. Yamamoto continued. We help support artists and musicians who show great promise. I would like to arrange for you to audition for our scholarship program. Audition? Keiko asked. But I'm not a real musician. I've never had lessons. That's exactly what makes you so special, Mr. Yamamoto said. Your music comes from your heart, not from textbooks. But if you want to grow as a musician, you will need proper training. He explained that the foundation could pay for piano lessons with the best teachers in the city. They could also help her learn to read music and understand music theory. If she did well, they might even pay for her to study at a music school. Why would you do this for me? Keiko asked. Mr. Yamamoto was quiet for a moment. Then he said, Because I gave up my musical dreams when I was young, and I have regretted it ever since. When I heard you play last night, I heard something I lost a long time ago. I want to make sure you don't lose it too. Keiko felt tears coming to her eyes. But I have to work. I have to take care of my mother. I can't afford to stop working and study music. You won't have to stop working, Mr. Yamamoto said. We can arrange for you to work part-time. The foundation will help with your mother's medical expenses too. Keiko could not speak. This seemed too good to be true. Things like this did not happen to people like her. There is one condition, Mr. Yamamoto said. You have to audition for our scholarship committee. They will want to hear you play and decide if you are ready for this opportunity. When? Keiko asked. Next week, Friday afternoon. Keiko was scared, but she was also excited. This was the chance she had dreamed of her whole life. The next week passed very slowly. Every night, Keiko practiced on the piano in the executive lounge. She played all her favorite pieces over and over. She worked on the songs she had composed herself. She wanted to be ready. Mr. Yamamoto had told her that 5 people would be on the scholarship committee. They were all musicians and music teachers who knew a lot about piano playing. On Friday afternoon, Keiko put on her best dress again and went to a different building downtown. The audition was in a small concert hall with a beautiful grand piano in the center. When she walked into the room, she saw 5 people sitting at a table. They looked very serious and important. Keiko felt very small and nervous. Please introduce yourself, said a woman with gray hair who seemed to be the leader of the committee. My name is Keiko Tanaka, she said in a quiet voice. I am 52 years old. I work as a cleaning lady at Yamamoto Corporation. And how long have you been studying piano? Asked a man with glasses. I have never studied piano, Keiko said. I learned by myself, just by listening to music and trying to play what I heard. The committee members looked at each other with surprise. They whispered together for a moment. What will you play for us today? The gray-haired woman asked. Keiko had practiced many difficult pieces, but suddenly she knew what she wanted to play. She wanted to play the song her grandmother used to sing to her when she was little. It was a simple Japanese folk song, but it meant more to her than any fancy classical piece. "I would like to play a song my grandmother taught me," she said. She sat down at the piano and put her hands on the keys. For a moment, she was so nervous that she could not move. Then she closed her eyes and thought about her grandmother's voice, sweet and gentle, singing her to sleep so many years ago. The music began to flow from her fingers. The simple melody filled the room with warmth and love. As she played, Keiko forgot about the committee members watching her. She forgot about being nervous. She just played from her heart. She sang along with the piano, very softly, in Japanese. The words were about cherry blossoms and spring rain and the beauty of simple things. Her voice was not perfect, but it was full of emotion and sincerity. When she finished, the room was completely quiet. Keiko opened her eyes and looked at the committee members. Some of them had tears in their eyes. "That was beautiful," the gray-haired woman said softly. "Would you play something else for us?" This time, Keiko played one of the melodies she had, composed herself. It was the song that sounded like hope after sadness, like light after darkness. She had never played it for anyone except Mr. Yamamoto. As she played, she could feel that something special was happening in the room. The music was connecting her to these strangers, making them understand something about her life and her dreams without her having to explain it in words. When she finished the second piece, the committee members talked together in whispers for several minutes. Keiko sat quietly at the piano, waiting. Finally, the gray-haired woman stood up and walked over to her. "Keiko-san," she said, "we have never heard anything quite like what you just played. Your technique needs work, and you have a lot to learn about music theory. But you have something that cannot be taught. You have a pure musical soul." "Does that mean?" Keiko started to ask. "Yes," the woman said with a smile. "Welcome to our scholarship program." 6 months later, Keiko was living a completely different life. She worked at the office 3 nights a week instead of 6. The other days, she took piano lessons with a wonderful teacher named Mrs. Suzuki. She was learning to read music and understand how songs were put together. But the most amazing thing was not the lessons or the music theory. The most amazing thing was that people were starting to know about her music. Mr. Yamamoto had arranged for her to give a small concert in the executive lounge where she had first played piano. He invited many important people from the company and from the Cultural Foundation. The night of the concert, Keiko sat at the same piano where she had discovered her gift. But now, instead of being alone and scared, she was surrounded by people who wanted to hear her music. She played 5 pieces that night. She played Für Elise and Amazing Grace and the Chopin Nocturne that had made Mr. Yamamoto cry. She also played 2 of her own compositions. When she finished, everyone in the room stood up and clapped for a long time. Many people were crying. Mr. Yamamoto was crying too, just like that first night when he had discovered her playing alone. After the concert, many people came up to talk to her. They told her how much her music had moved them. They said they had never heard anything so honest and beautiful. "You are a real musician now," Mr. Yamamoto said to her that night. But Keiko shook her head. "I was always a real musician," she said. "I just didn't know it yet." As she looked around the room at all the people who had come to hear her play, Keiko thought about her grandmother. She thought about all the years when she had dreamed of making music, but thought it was impossible. She thought about that first night when she had touched just one piano key, just to hear what it would sound like. That one note had changed everything. Now she knew that it is never too late to discover who you really are. It is never too late to let your dreams become real. Sometimes the most beautiful music comes from the most unexpected places, and sometimes the most ordinary people turn out to be the most extraordinary musicians of all. 1 year had passed since Keiko's first concert in the executive lounge. Her life had changed in ways she never thought possible. She was no longer just a cleaning lady who played piano in secret. She was a student, learning music in a real school, with real teachers. Mrs. Suzuki, her piano teacher, was a small woman with kind eyes and very high standards. She had studied music in Paris and Vienna. She had taught many famous musicians. When she first heard Keiko play, she was amazed. "You have natural talent that I see maybe once in 20 years, Mrs. Suzuki had told her. But talent alone is not enough. Now, you must learn discipline and technique. The lessons were much harder than Keiko had expected. Learning to read music was like learning a new language. All those little black dots and lines that she had wondered about for so long now had names and meanings. Quarter notes, half notes, sharps, flats, crescendos, diminuendos. There was so much to remember. Mrs. Suzuki made Keiko practice scales every day. Scales were not beautiful music like the songs Keiko loved to play. They were just patterns of notes going up and down, over and over again. "Why do I need to practice scales?" Keiko asked one day. "They don't sound like real music." "Scales are like alphabet letters," Mrs. Suzuki explained. "Before you can write beautiful poetry, you must know your letters perfectly. Before you can play beautiful music, you must know your scales perfectly." So Keiko practiced scales every morning before she went to sleep. She practiced them every evening before she went to work. Her fingers grew stronger and faster. Her hands learned to move independently of each other. But the hardest part was not the technical training. The hardest part was learning to play music the correct way, instead of the way that felt natural to her. "No, no," Mrs. Suzuki would say, stopping Keiko in the middle of a piece. "The composer wrote staccato here. That means short and sharp, not smooth and flowing." "But it sounds better smooth," Keiko would say. "Maybe it sounds better to you," Mrs. Suzuki would reply. "But if you want to be a serious musician, you must learn to respect what the composer intended." Sometimes Keiko felt frustrated. When she played by herself, by feeling, the music seemed to flow like water. But when she tried to follow all the rules she was learning, the music felt stiff and artificial. One day, she almost quit her lessons. "I don't think I'm meant to study music." "Formally," she told Mr. Yamamoto when they met for their monthly coffee. "Maybe I should just keep playing for fun the way I used to." Mr. Yamamoto listened carefully. Then he told her a story. "When I was young," he said, "I wanted to be a businessman like my father, but I also wanted to keep playing piano. I thought I could do both without really working hard at either one. Do you know what happened?" "What?" Keiko asked. "I became a mediocre businessman and a mediocre pianist. I was not willing to do the hard work that excellence requires. Don't make the same mistake I made." That conversation made Keiko think. She realized that she had a choice. She could stay comfortable and safe, playing piano just for her own enjoyment. Or she could push herself to grow, even if it was difficult and sometimes frustrating. She decided to keep studying. The breakthrough came 6 months later. Mrs. Suzuki had been teaching her a very difficult piece by Franz Liszt. It was called Liebestraum No. 3, Love Dream in English. The piece required perfect finger coordination and very precise timing. For weeks, Keiko struggled with it. Her fingers got tangled up in the complicated passages. She could not make the melody sing the way she heard it in her head. "I can't do it," she said to Mrs. Suzuki one day after a particularly frustrating lesson. "This piece is too hard for someone like me." Mrs. Suzuki looked at her sternly. "Someone like you? What does that mean?" "Someone who started learning so late. Someone who doesn't have proper musical education from childhood." "Keiko-san," Mrs. Suzuki said firmly, "let me tell you something. I have taught students who started piano at age 3. I have taught students who went to the best music schools in the world. Most of them could play this piece correctly, but they could not make it live. You have something they don't have." "What's that?" "You understand what the music means. You know what it feels like to love and lose and hope and dream. When you play, you tell a story. Technical skill can be learned, but that kind of understanding comes from living. Mrs. Suzuki sat down at the piano next to Keiko. Let me show you something. Play the piece, but don't think about the finger positions or the timing. Think about the story. This piece is about love, deep, passionate love that fills your whole heart. Play it like you are telling someone about the greatest love of your life. Keiko put her hands on the keys and began to play. But this time, instead of thinking about technique, she thought about Taro. She remembered how it felt to fall in love with him, to dance with him at their wedding, to hold his hand when their children were born. The music that came from her fingers was different than anything she had played before. It was technically better than her old playing, but it also had all the emotion and feeling that made her music special. When she finished, Mrs. Suzuki had tears in her eyes. Now you understand, her teacher said. Technique and feeling are not enemies. They work together to create something beautiful. From that day on, Keiko's playing changed. She still practiced scales and exercises, but now she understood why they were important. They were tools that helped her express her feelings more clearly. Word about Keiko's progress began to spread in the music community. Mrs. Suzuki entered her in a competition for adult piano students. Keiko was nervous about competing against people who had been studying music much longer than she had. Remember, Mrs. Suzuki told her before the competition, you are not trying to prove you are the best pianist in the world. You are trying to share your music with people who want to hear it. The competition was held in a beautiful concert hall downtown. There were 25 contestants, ranging in age from 18 to 65. Some of them played pieces that were much more technically difficult than anything Keiko had learned. When it was Keiko's turn, she walked onto the stage and sat at the grand piano. She looked out at the audience, about 200 people sitting in red velvet seats. For a moment, she felt scared and small. Then she remembered the first night she had played piano in the executive lounge. She remembered how the music had made her feel free and alive. She remembered Mr. Yamamoto listening with tears in his eyes. She began to play Liebestraum No. 3. As the beautiful melody filled the concert hall, Keiko forgot about the competition. She forgot about the other contestants. She just played the music from her heart, telling the story of love and dreams and hope. When she finished, the audience was completely quiet for a moment. Then they began to applaud, softly at first, then louder and louder. Some people stood up. Soon the whole audience was standing and clapping. Keiko did not win first prize in the competition. That went to a young man who played a very difficult Rachmaninoff concerto perfectly. But she won something better. She won the Audience Choice Award and the Most Expressive Performance Award. After the competition, many people came up to talk to her. They told her how much her playing had moved them. A woman with gray hair said, I have been coming to these competitions for 15 years. I have never heard anyone play with such pure emotion. A music critic from the local newspaper asked to interview her. What makes your playing so special? He asked. Keiko thought for a moment. I think it's because I waited so long to find music, she said. When you want something for your whole life and then finally get it, you don't take it for granted. Every note I play is a gift. The article about Keiko appeared in the newspaper the next week. The headline said, The Cleaning Lady Who Became a Concert Pianist. The article told her whole story, how she discovered her talent, how Mr. Yamamoto helped her, how she was now studying seriously. After the article was published, something unexpected happened. People began to contact her, asking her to play at their events. A church wanted her to play for a wedding. A community center wanted her to give a concert for senior citizens. A school wanted her to play for their graduation ceremony. Keiko was amazed. People actually wanted to pay her to play music. Something she loved doing more than anything else in the world could actually become a way to make money. But more than that, She realized that her music was making a difference in people's lives. When she played at the wedding, she saw the bride and groom crying happy tears. When she played at the senior center, she saw elderly people remembering their own young love. When she played at the school graduation, she saw parents feeling proud and hopeful for their children's futures. Her music was no longer just for herself. It was a gift she could give to others. 2 years after winning the Audience Choice Award, Keiko's life had changed completely. She was no longer working as a cleaning lady at all. The Yamamoto Cultural Foundation had offered her a full scholarship to study music, and she was now earning money by giving piano lessons and performing at various events around the city. Her mother's health had improved, too. With better medical care that the foundation helped pay for, the old woman was stronger and happier. She was very proud of her daughter. "I always knew you were special," her mother would tell visitors. Even when she was little, she could hear music that other people couldn't hear. Keiko had moved to a small apartment closer to the music school. It had a tiny living room, 1 bedroom, and most importantly, space for an old upright piano that Mrs. Suzuki had helped her buy. Finally, Keiko could practice at home whenever she wanted. Every morning, she would wake up and spend 2 hours practicing. Then she would go to the music school for lessons or theory classes. In the afternoons, she taught piano to children and adults who wanted to learn. In the evenings, she often performed at restaurants, hotels, or private parties. Her reputation was growing steadily. The music critic who had interviewed her after the competition had written several more articles about her progress. He called her the most inspiring musical story of our time. But Keiko's biggest challenge came when Mrs. Suzuki told her about a special opportunity. "There is going to be a regional piano competition next month," Mrs. Suzuki said. "It's much bigger than the adult student competition you won before. Professional pianists from all over the country will be competing." "Professional pianists?" Keiko asked. "But I'm not a professional. I only started studying seriously 3 years ago." "You are more professional than you think," Mrs. Suzuki said. "You practice every day, you perform regularly, and you earn money from music. That makes you a professional. But those other pianists have been studying since they were children. They went to famous music schools. They know so much more than I do." Mrs. Suzuki smiled. "Knowledge is not everything. You have something that cannot be taught in any school. The competition would be held in Tokyo, the biggest city in Japan. Pianists from all over the country would come to compete. The winner would get a chance to perform with the Tokyo Symphony Orchestra." Keiko was scared, but she was also excited. This was the kind of opportunity she had dreamed about. She spent the next month preparing intensively. Mrs. Suzuki helped her choose 3 pieces to perform. The first was a Bach invention, precise and mathematical. The second was the Chopin Nocturne that had made Mr. Yamamoto cry the first night he heard her play. The third was one of her own compositions. "Your own composition?" Mrs. Suzuki had suggested. "Are you sure?" "It's the piece that represents who I am," Keiko said. "If I'm going to compete with the best pianists in the country, I want to show them something they've never heard before." Practicing for the competition was the hardest thing Keiko had ever done. She practiced 6 hours a day. Her fingers got sore. Her back ached from sitting at the piano for so long. Sometimes she felt so tired that she wanted to give up, but every time she felt like quitting, she remembered that first night when she touched the piano keys in the executive lounge. She remembered the feeling of discovering that music had been inside her all along, waiting to come out. The week before the competition, something wonderful happened. Mr. Yamamoto called her. "I have a surprise for you," he said. "I'm organizing a bus trip to Tokyo. Many people from the company want to come support you at the competition." "Really?" Keiko could hardly believe it. "Really. We'll have about 50 people there cheering for you." The day of the competition, Keiko woke up early in her hotel room in Tokyo. She was more nervous than she had ever been in her life. Her hands were shaking as she ate breakfast. When she arrived at the competition venue, a grand concert hall that seated 2,000 people, she saw the other contestants warming up. They all looked so confident and professional. Many of them were young people in their 20s and 30s who had been playing piano their whole lives. Keiko found a practice room and spent an hour going through her pieces one more time. As she played, she tried to calm her nerves by focusing on the music instead of the competition. When it was time for the competition to begin, Keiko peeked out at the audience from backstage. The concert hall was completely full. In one section, she could see Mr. Yamamoto and all the people from his company. They had made a banner that said, "Go Keiko," in bright red letters. The competition format was different from what Keiko was used to. Instead of each pianist playing all their pieces at once, they would perform one piece at a time in 3 different rounds. The judges would eliminate some contestants after each round. In the first round, each pianist played their Bach piece. Keiko was contestant number 23 out of 40. She had to wait a long time for her turn, which made her even more nervous. When her name was finally called, Keiko walked onto the stage. The bright lights made it hard to see the audience, but she could hear Mr. Yamamoto and his group cheering for her. She sat down at the beautiful grand piano and began to play Bach's Invention number 13. The piece was technically challenging, with 2 independent melodies that had to be played perfectly at the same time. As she played, Keiko forgot about the competition and the audience. She focused on the mathematical beauty of Bach's music, the way the 2 melodies danced around each other like old friends having a conversation. When she finished, the audience applauded politely. She could not tell from their reaction how well she had done. After all 40 contestants had played their Bach pieces, the judges announced that 25 pianists would advance to the second round. Keiko held her breath as they read the names. Contestant number 23, Keiko Tanaka. She had made it to the second round. Mr. Yamamoto and his group cheered so loudly that other people in the audience turned to look at them. The second round featured the romantic pieces. Keiko would be playing her Chopin Nocturne, the piece that had started everything. This time she was more relaxed when she walked onto the stage. She knew this piece so well that she could play it in her sleep. But more than that, she knew what story she wanted to tell with it. As she began to play, Keiko thought about her journey. She thought about all the years when she had dreamed of playing piano, but thought it was impossible. She thought about her husband Taro and how much she missed him. She thought about her mother getting older and all the sacrifices they had both made. The music that came from her fingers was not just technically perfect, it was emotionally perfect too. Every note told part of her story. The audience could feel her joy, her sadness, her hope, and her determination. When she finished, something amazing happened. The audience did not just applaud, they gave her a standing ovation. Even some of the other contestants were clapping and smiling. This time, only 12 contestants advanced to the final round. Again, Keiko's name was called. The final round was for original compositions or free choice pieces. Most of the remaining contestants chose to play very difficult, famous pieces by composers like Liszt or Rachmaninoff. But Keiko chose to play her own composition, the piece she had written about hope after darkness, about dreams that come true, even when you think it's too late. Walking onto the stage for the 3rd time, Keiko felt different. She was no longer nervous or worried about what the judges would think. She just wanted to share her music with all these people. She sat down at the piano and began to play her own piece. The melody was simple but beautiful, like a story being told by someone who had lived through many experiences. As she played, Keiko could feel that something special was happening in the concert hall. The audience was completely silent, hanging on every note. Even the other contestants backstage stopped talking and listened. The piece told the story of her whole life, the difficult times, the lonely times, the moment when she discovered her gift, the people who helped her along the way, and the hope that had always lived inside her heart. When she finished, the entire concert hall exploded in applause. People were not only standing, some were crying. The ovation went on for 5 minutes. When the judges announced the results, Keiko did not win first place. That went to a brilliant young pianist who had played a technically perfect Rachmaninoff concerto. But Keiko won second place, and more importantly, she won the People's Choice Award, the award voted on by the audience. As she stood on the stage, holding her trophy, Keiko looked out at the cheering audience. She saw Mr. Yamamoto wiping tears from his eyes. She saw Mrs. Suzuki beaming with pride. She saw hundreds of strangers who had been moved by her music. After the competition, a representative from a major record company approached her. "We would like to talk to you about making a recording," he said. "Your music has something very special. We think people all over Japan would want to hear it." A few months later, Keiko released her first album. It was called Never Too Late and featured both classical pieces and her own compositions. The album became very popular, especially among older adults who felt inspired by her story. But the most meaningful moment came when she received a letter from a 60-year-old woman in Osaka. "Dear Keiko-san," the letter said, "I heard your music on the radio and learned about your story. For 40 years, I have wanted to learn to paint." 5 years had passed since Keiko first touched the piano keys in the executive lounge. Now she was sitting in the same room, but everything was different. She was no longer the invisible cleaning lady. She was Keiko Tanaka, the famous pianist, whose story had inspired thousands of people across Japan and beyond. Tonight was special. Yamamoto Corporation was celebrating its 50th anniversary, and they had asked Keiko to perform at the celebration. The executive lounge had been transformed into a small concert venue. All the most important business leaders in the city were there, along with many of Keiko's friends and students. Mr. Yamamoto introduced her to the audience. "5 years ago," he said, "I came to this office late one night and heard the most beautiful music I had ever heard. I discovered that our cleaning lady, Keiko Tanaka, had a gift that none of us had noticed. Tonight, we are honored to have her perform for us as one of Japan's most beloved pianists." As Keiko walked to the piano, she thought about how much her life had changed. Her second album, Dreams at Any Age, had sold over 100,000 copies. She had performed in concert halls all over Japan. She had been featured on television shows and in magazines. Most importantly, she had received thousands of letters from people who said her story had changed their lives. But tonight felt especially meaningful because she was back where it all started. She sat down at the same piano where she had first discovered her gift. The room was full of people, but for a moment she remembered how it felt to be alone here, afraid to touch the keys, dreaming of making music. "Good evening," she said to the audience. 5 years ago, I was cleaning this room every night. I would dust this piano and dream about what it would be like to play it. I never imagined that my dreams would come true, or that they would lead me to help other people find their dreams too." She began to play the first piece she had ever learned, the simple melody her grandmother used to hum. As the familiar notes filled the room, Keiko could almost hear her grandmother's voice singing along. After the song ended, she spoke to the audience again. "This is the song that started everything. It taught me that music doesn't have to be complicated to be beautiful. It just has to come from the heart." Next, she played the Chopin Nocturne that had made Mr. Yamamoto cry that first night. As she played, she looked at him sitting in the front row. He was crying again, just like he had 5 years ago. But the most important part of the evening came when she played her newest composition. She had written it specifically for tonight. "This piece is called The Gift We All Carry," she announced. "I wrote it because I've learned that everyone has a special gift inside them. Sometimes we discover it early in life, and sometimes we discover it late. But it's never too late to let your gift shine." The new piece was different from her earlier compositions. It was more complex, showing how much she had grown as a musician. But it still had the emotional honesty that made her music special, as She played, Keiko thought about all the people her story had touched. There was Hiroshi, a 45-year-old businessman who had started taking painting classes after hearing her speak. There was Yuki, a 38-year-old mother who had gone back to school to become a teacher. There was Takeshi, a 62-year-old man who had started writing poetry for the first time in his life. When she finished the piece, the audience gave her a long, standing ovation. But Keiko had one more surprise for them. "I would like to invite someone special to join me," she said. "Mrs. Suzuki, my piano teacher, is here tonight. She taught me that technique, and feeling must work together to create beautiful music. Mrs. Suzuki, would you play with me?" Mrs. Suzuki, now 68 years old, walked to the piano with a big smile. She sat down next to Keiko on the piano bench. "What shall we play?" Mrs. Suzuki asked. "How about Für Elise?" Keiko suggested. "The first piece I ever tried to learn by reading sheet music." The two women played the beloved Beethoven piece together, with Mrs. Suzuki taking the melody and Keiko adding harmony. It was a perfect symbol of how far Keiko had come. From someone who couldn't read music to someone who could create beautiful harmonies on the spot. After the concert, many people came up to talk to Keiko. But the conversation that meant the most to her was with a young woman named Amy. "Miss Tanaka," Amy said, "I work as a waitress at a restaurant downtown, but I've always wanted to be a dancer. I'm 28 years old. Do you think it's too late for me to start?" Keiko smiled and took Amy's hands. "Let me tell you something," she said. "I was 52 when I first played piano. You are 28. You have so much time ahead of you. The only question is, do you want it badly enough to work for it?" "Yes," Ami said with tears in her eyes. "I want it more than anything." "Then start tomorrow," Keiko said. "Find a dance teacher. Take your first class. And remember, every expert was once a beginner." 6 months later, Keiko received a letter from Ami. The young woman had enrolled in a dance school and was already performing in small productions. "Thank you for giving me the courage to try," Ami wrote. "You were right. It's never too late to start." Around this same time, Keiko got an unexpected phone call. It was from a television producer in America. "Miss Tanaka," the producer said, "we've heard about your story, and we would like to make a documentary about your life. We want to share your story with people all over the world." The documentary, called It's Never Too Late, was shown on television in many countries. Keiko's story reached people in America, Europe, Australia, and South America. She began receiving letters in English, Spanish, French, and other languages from people who had been inspired by her journey. A woman from Brazil wrote, "I am 55 years old and have always wanted to learn to play guitar. After seeing your documentary, I bought a guitar and started taking lessons. Thank you for showing me that age is just a number." A man from Germany wrote, "I am 48 and have always dreamed of becoming a writer. Your story gave me the courage to start writing my first novel." The letters kept coming, hundreds and then thousands of them. Each one told a story of someone who had found the courage to pursue their dreams after learning about Keiko's journey. Realizing how much her story was helping people, Keiko decided to write a book. She called it The Music Inside: Finding Your Gift at Any Age. The book became a bestseller in Japan and was translated into 12 languages. In the book, she wrote, "I spent 52 years of my life thinking that music was something for other people, not for me. I thought I was too old, too poor, too ordinary to have a gift. But I learned that gifts don't care about age or money or education. They only care about being discovered and nurtured." 3 years after the documentary aired, Keiko established the Never Too Late Foundation. The foundation provided scholarships and support for adults who wanted to pursue creative dreams later in life. They helped a 60-year-old carpenter become a sculptor, a 45-year-old nurse become a photographer, and a 55-year-old accountant become a professional chef. Every year, the foundation held a celebration where scholarship recipients performed or displayed their work. Keiko always played piano at these events, but what she enjoyed most was watching other people share their newly discovered gifts. At one of these celebrations, a 67-year-old man named Ken performed a song he had written. He had never played music before joining the Foundation's program 2 years earlier. "I thought my life was over when I retired," Ken said after his performance. "But Keiko-san taught me that sometimes life's best chapters come at the end of the book, not the beginning." As Keiko listened to Ken's words, she thought about her own journey. She was now 57 years old and more fulfilled than she had ever imagined possible. She had found her gift, shared it with the world, and helped countless other people find their gifts too. But the most meaningful moment came on a quiet Tuesday evening. Keiko was practicing piano in her apartment when she heard a knock at the door. When she opened it, she found a little girl about 8 years old standing in the hallway. "Are you the famous piano lady?" the girl asked. "I suppose I am," Keiko said with a smile. "What's your name?" "I'm Sakura. My grandmother lives next door. She says you used to be a cleaning lady, but now you're a famous musician." "That's right. Would you like to hear me play something?" Sakura nodded eagerly. Keiko sat down at her piano and played the same simple melody her grandmother had taught her so many years ago. "That's beautiful," Sakura said. "Could you teach me to play like that?" "Of course," Keiko said, "but it takes a lot of practice." "I don't mind practicing," Sakura said. "My grandmother says if you work hard enough, dreams can come true even when you're old. But I'm still young, so maybe my dreams will come true faster." Keiko laughed. "You're very wise for 8 years old. Yes, I think your dreams will come true, much faster than mine did." As she began to teach Sakura her first piano lesson, Keiko realized that her story had come full circle. She had gone from dreaming about music to making music to teaching music to the next generation. That night, as she got ready for bed, Keiko looked at herself in the mirror. She saw a woman who had discovered that it's never too late to become who you were meant to be. She saw someone who had learned that the most beautiful music comes not from perfect technique, but from a heart that refuses to give up on its dreams. Tomorrow, she would give another concert. Next week, she would help another adult student discover their gift. Next month,